In our second screencast in chapter 13, we're going to go into a little bit more depth in sexual life cycles and also get us geared up to start talking about the phases of meiosis. So in sexual life cycles, you alternate between fertilization and meiosis. So we're going to talk about those topics a little bit later on. And first talk about what a life cycle is generation to generation sequence in the reproductive history of an organism. So basically birth, adult, reproduce, birth, adult, birth, youth, grow up, reproduce, etc. and so on. Okay, so meiosis, the chromosomes are manipulated a little bit differently from mitosis, so we need to get a bunch of terms down for meiosis. So first we're going to talk about chromosomes and sets of chromosomes. So we talked about somatic cells. So again, somatic cells are all the cells in your body other than the gametes. So it does not include the gametes. Somatic cells have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So that's 46 total. Okay. But in meiosis, we are much more concerned with the pairs. Okay? If you have a karyotype is a picture of the pairs of chromosomes from a cell in M phase. Okay? The chromosomes, the two chromosomes in each pair, are called homologous chromosomes. Okay? And homologous, this word here is very important, means similar but not identical. Okay, so the two parts of a homologous pair, the two chromosomes in a homologous pair, are the same length, the same shape. They carry the same genes that control the same inherited characters. Okay, so if you look, here's a this is a karyotype right here, and you see this is a human karyotype. And you can see each pair of chromosomes. There's the 2 copies of chromosome 1, 2 copies of chromosome 2, etc. Okay, and here we have a pair of homologous chromosomes. And these are duplicated chromosomes because there are 2 sister chromatids. Okay, and you'll see the chromosomes are about the same size. The centromeres are in the same position. They contain all the same genes. Okay, but this pair, if you think about it, one member of the pair you got from mom, and the other member of the pair you got from your dad. That's the symbols for female and male. So while they are both chromosome 1, they came from 2 different individuals, so they are similar, but they are not identical. So homologous chromosomes are similar, but not identical. So you have 22 pairs of chromosomes that we call autosomes, okay? And then 1 pair of sex chromosomes. And the sex chromosomes determines the sex of the individual. So there are 2 different sex chromosomes, X and Y, okay? If you are female, genetically female, you have a homologous pair of X chromosomes, 2 X chromosomes. If you are genetically male, you have 1 X chromosome and 1 Y chromosome. So if we go back to this karyotype and we look at our, can you find the pair of sex chromosomes? It's right there, right here. And so is this individual male or female? That's right. This is a male. Okay, so back to our homologous chromosomes, because this is super important for meiosis. Homologous chromosomes include 1 chromosome from each parent. So 1 chromosome from mom and 1 chromosome from dad in each pair. So the 46 chromosomes in a human somatic cell are 2 sets of 23. 1 full set comes from your mother, and 1 full set comes from your father. Okay? If a cell has both sets of chromosomes, it's called a diploid cell, and we use the number 2n to represent that cell. So it has your number of chromosomes times 2. Okay. For humans, the diploid number is 46. So again, 2n equals 46. In a cell where you have DNA synthesis, chromosomes are replicated. And replicated chromosomes have 2 identical sister chromatids, right? So if I have chromosome here, it goes through S phase and replicates itself. Just pretend those are completely identical. So now it has 2 identical sister chromatids. And if we look here, here's sister chromatids of 1 duplicated chromosome. Okay, and if we can make our pairs here, this chromosome pairs with that chromosome. This chromosome pairs with that chromosome because they're the same length. And these 2 are a pair of homologous chromosomes. And again, if you look, the reds are from your mom, the blues are from the father. And so here, because maternal set, there are 3 maternal chromosomes, so n equals 3. There are 3 paternal chromosomes, n equals 3. So the diploid number for this cell, 2n, is equal to 6. Okay, so there are 6 total chromosomes. And so this is a diploid cell, because there's still 2 copies of every chromosome. Gametes are different from somatic cells, and the gametes are the sperm and the egg, because they contain only 1 set of chromosomes, 1 set, and they are considered to be haploid, so they just have n number of chromosomes, so n is the haploid number. For humans, our haploid number is 23, n equals 23, and then if we go diploid, 2n equals 46. So again, each set of 23 chromosomes, again, has 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome. Okay? If you have an egg as your gamete, the sex chromosome is always an X, because your mother can only donate X chromosomes because females only have X chromosomes. In the male gamete or a sperm cell, the sex chromosome can be an X or a Y. Okay? So the male parent determines the sex of the offspring. I can't fit offspring. Determines the sex of the offspring. Okay. Now, fertilization. So gametes are produced via meiosis. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then when you have 2 gametes that fuse, that process is called fertilization, the union of gametes. So egg plus sperm. Okay. Once you fuse the gametes, egg plus sperm, we call this fertilized egg is a zygote. So egg plus sperm equals zygote. Okay. And the sperm has 1 set of chromosomes, haploid set from the father. The egg has 1 haploid set from the mother. So when you put those 2 sets together in a zygote, you have 1 set of chromosomes from each parent. Okay? And then the zygote is now diploid, 2n. Okay, egg and sperm are just haploid, n. The zygote is 2n, and then we'll divide via mitosis to produce all of the somatic cells of the adult. Once an organism has reached sexual maturity, okay, the gonads or the ovaries and the testes will produce haploid gametes via meiosis. Okay, and gametes are the only cells produced via meiosis. Every other cell in the body, all the somatic cells, produce via mitosis. So meiosis is specific to the production of gametes. Meiosis is a reduction division, in that it reduces the number of chromosomes, the number of sets of chromosomes in a cell. So meiosis results in one set of chromosomes in each gamete. So reducing from 2 sets to 1 set. Okay? And then fertilization and meiosis alternate in sexual life cycles to maintain the chromosome number. You go down to 1 set in meiosis, and fertilization brings 2 sets together. And then you go down to 1 set in meiosis, fertilization brings 2 sets together, and so on. And this is just a little diagram that kind of shows how it works. So if we have cells in the ovaries, we're talking, so brown is diploid and green is haploid. So we have diploid cells in the ovary and the testes. They undergo meiosis, which reduces the number of chromosomes to a haploid number. Okay, and then you have haploid gametes, egg plus sperm. They unite via fertilization. So we add N plus N, and you get 2N. This gives us a diploid zygote. The zygote divides via mitosis and to the organism. And then in the gonads, the ovaries and the testes, okay, undergoes meiosis again, and it just keeps going around and around. Okay. This alternation of meiosis and fertilization is common to every organism that reproduces sexually. So not just animals, not just humans, plants, fungi, all kinds of stuff. Okay. There are 3 main types of sexual life cycles, and basically what they all follow this basic pattern. Okay, but they just alternate the timing of meiosis and fertilization. Okay. In animals, gametes are the only haploid cells. Okay, they are produced by meiosis, and they don't divide at all before fertilization. Okay, so then the gametes fuse to form a diploid zygote that divides via mitosis to form a multicellular organism. Okay. And this just shows you the alternation of generations in, or the sexual life cycle of an animal. Again, this is just like what we saw with the humans. You have a diploid organism in the gonads. Cells will undergo meiosis to form haploid gametes. Then you fuse 2 gametes together via fertilization into a diploid zygote that undergoes the process of mitosis into an adult organism. And then we keep going around and around and around. Okay. Plants and some algae exhibit alternation of generations, where there is a diploid and haploid multicellular stage. Okay? The diploid multicellular stage is called the sporophyte and makes spores, haploid spores, so they're not called gametes. Well, the spores. The spores will make gametes. Sporophyte and makes haploid spores via meiosis. The spore divides via mitosis into a haploid organism called a gametophyte, and the gametophyte makes gametes via mitosis. Fertilization of gametes results in a diploid sporophyte, which then divides via meiosis to make spores, and etc. and so on. So if we look here at the alternation of generations, let's start with the sporophyte. So a diploid multicellular organism divides via meiosis to produce haploid spores. Those spores divide via mitosis to produce clones to make a multicellular organism called the gametophyte. Some cells of the gametophyte divide via mitosis to produce gametes. Gametes from two organisms fuse via fertilization to produce a diploid zygote. That zygote divides via mitosis to produce our diploid sporophyte, and then the process just begins again. Okay, so there are multicellular forms of both a diploid and haploid organism. Okay. In fungi and protists, the diploid stage is unicellular, and there is no multicellular diploid stage. The zygote produces haploid cells via meiosis, and the haploid cell grows via mitosis into a haploid multicellular organism. Okay, so again, in fungi and some protists, there is a reduced diploid stage. It's just the diploid zygote. It divides via meiosis into a haploid organism, which then divides via mitosis into a multicellular organism. Multicellular organism divides again via mitosis into a gamete. Two gametes fuse via fertilization to form the zygote, and the whole process begins again. Okay. So depending on the type of life cycle, either haploid or diploid cells can both divide via mitosis. However, only diploid cells can undergo meiosis because you have to go from 2N to N. In all three life cycles, the halving and doubling of chromosomes contributes to genetic variation. And again, that's going to be your new favorite phrase, genetic variation, because that's what meiosis is all about. Okay, so that's it for sexual life cycles. And next, we're going to get into how meiosis actually works, how it reduces the sets of chromosomes.